Mamie Phipps Clark, one of the first African American women to earn a Doctor of Philosophy degree in psychology from the University of Columbia. Mamie Phipps was born on October 18, 1917, in Hot Springs, Arkansas, where she attended a public elementary school and segregated Langston High School. Phipps graduated from Langston High School, where she won scholarships to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, and Howard University in Washington, D.C. She ended up electing and attending Howard to study mathematics and physics. But when Phipps got to Howard University, her as a student, possibly due to prejudice against women entering such field at the time, was not positive during her time at Howard University, in which she went to the route of going to psychology. During Marie's fifth time at Howard University, she met her husband, Kenneth Clark, who was a graduate student at Howard University studying psychology and the racism and segregation of the African American students. Clark influenced Phipps to switch to psychology because of everything that was going on with her in the physics and math department and how she wasn't being treated fairly. Mamie Phipps and Kenneth Clark ended up getting married in 1937 and had two children, Kate in 1940 and Hilton in 1943. Kenneth Clark was the first African American male to obtain his doctoral degree in psychology from Columbia University, and Mamie Clark was the first African American woman to receive her doctoral degree in psychology from Columbia University. The two went on to do research together and received a lot of important roles in psychology. Kenneth Clark was one of the first African Americans to have an important role in psychology, where he became a professor of the City College of New York, as well as president of the American Psychological Association, and was appointed to the New York State Board of Regents. Mamie Clark graduated from Howard University with her psychological bachelor's degree. She went on to earn her master's degree at the Howard University, where her master's thesis was on the development of conscience in Negro preschool children. She completed her master's degree in 1939, and one of her biggest accomplishments was the establishment of the Clark doll experiment. This experiment was based on having a black child at that time choose between a white doll and a black doll. And each time the black children would choose a white doll because they were already aware of their racial identity and what was going on around them. And that triggered something big in Mamie Clark and Kenneth Clark to understand why these children were already at the time understanding about racial identity and how each black children were around the age of 3. The Clark's experiment paved the way for the areas of self-esteem and self-concept because of how the children reacted to the doll and how each child reacted in similar ways. Her research was an important step in the evolution of developmental psychology. After many years of research, the Clarks opened up their own agency in 1946, which was called the Northside Testing and Consultational Center. They later called it Northside Center for Child Development, and this was because of the Clarks trying to persuade the social agency of Harlem to provide psychological service for children, but they were denied, and the Clarks ended up making this establishment. This was one of the first full-time child guidance center offering psychological and casework services to families in the Harlem area. There, they also continued conducting experiments on racial biases in education. After years of doing research with her husband, Mamie Clark and Kenneth Clark decided to do a research on segregation and worked with other social scientists on the effects of segregation. The Clarks were influential to the civil rights movement, and their expertise allowed them to testify as expert witness in several school desegregation cases, including the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. The Clarks played an important role in this case because their experiment, the Clark doll experiment, was enough evidence for the Supreme Court to declare the doctrine of separate but equal unconstitutional for the African Americans, meaning that the The Supreme Court acknowledged that to separate them from others of similar age and qualifications solely because of their race generates a feeling of inferiority as to their status in the community that may affect their hearts and minds in a way unlikely never to be undone. This movement was a step to the civil rights movement and everything that was going on, but it showed that the children weren't themselves, the children weren't communicating properly to who they were, and because of the racial identity, they just didn't want to be themselves and wanted to be more like their peers who were white. After the Brown versus Board of Education case in 1954, Mamie Clark served on the board of trustees of Teachers College Communities, Columbia University, Mount Sinai Medical Care, the New York Mission Society, the New York Public Library, and the American Broadcasting Company, as we know as ABC. And outside of and outside of her research and applied contribution, they both served in the community and on committees to make a difference. Mamie Clark passed away in 1983 at the age of 66, but Clark made a significant contribution to the field of psychology and to the social movement of her time. Not only did she make a difference for African American children, but she made a difference for us now. She not only just wanted to go against what was going on during that time, but she went in another direction than Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and she went the psychological route and said that if we can just look at what's going on and how these children are acting now, we will understand that it's not humanity to continue treating one race different than another. And she made this a difference, and this is the reason why developmental psychology has changed and is what it is today.